You know the rare earth minerals deal that the U.S. just signed with Ukraine, promising to pay for Ukraine's reconstruction if Ukraine would give us their rare earth minerals to reimburse us for it? Well, if you're a supporter of Ukraine, as I am, then when you first heard the news about this deal, you may have panicked and thought, oh no, that's terrible for Ukraine. But it turns out it's awesome for Ukraine. Uh, but it's worse for us than if we hadn't demanded any compensation at all. And you may remember the president did this deal to be good for us. So if it's bad for us, he's not getting what he bargained for. But who would have guessed that President Genius, the brilliant deal maker in the White House, would have gotten all the facts wrong and made a really terrible deal? He's a genius businessman after all. I mean, he makes the best deals, but it turns out it would have been far cheaper and smarter to just pay for Ukraine's reconstruction outright without asking for anything in return. I mean, think about it. The best way we could be repaid, in reality, if we didn't have if we didn't have a transactional president in the White House, if we had a normal president, no one would even think of asking Ukraine to pay for anything. That's ridiculous. The best way we could be repaid by Ukraine would be to have a strong, democratic, and free neighbor added to Western Europe, added to our Western alliance, and especially one that's so strong militarily and that's right on the border with Russia. Talk about a deterrence. Any future Russian president would be an absolute fool to use Ukraine as a route to the rest of Europe. Look how this army has fought with just a smattering of weapons from us in the West, and they've handled it all. They haven't asked anybody to come in and help them out. Just give them the equipment they need, and I mean, what they've done is really, it's unbelievable. Why do we think we should be repaid dollar for everything anyway, right? I mean, why can't we see that having a strong, stable, and free Ukraine is the best repayment anyone could ever get? And I should say by we, I mean the man in the White House. Anyway, I'll tell you why we can't see it. Because we're not a great country anymore. We're just not. We were a great country, and overnight we became ungreat. And now we're not a great country anymore. The minute he was sworn into office for the second term, that was it. We were no longer a great country after that. But in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you that Ukraine has virtually no rare earth minerals. This goes against everything you're hearing in the media. Um, well, sorry, let me take that back. They do have rare earth minerals, but they have none that are economically viable to extract. You see, it's not whether they have them or not, it's whether it's economically feasible to get them out of the ground. But I'm also going to show you that we'll have to build the infrastructure to extract the minerals since they don't have any infrastructure to do that right now. And I'm going to show you that the worldwide market for rare earth minerals is less than $5 billion a year, meaning that if Ukraine had 100% of the global market in rare earth minerals, if they were the only supplier in the whole world, it would take 100 years to earn the $500 billion that the man in the White House thinks we're going to earn. And let's say they didn't get quite 100% of the market. Let's say more realistically, maybe something closer to 10% of the world market. It would take 1,000 years to earn $500 billion in today's dollars. I mean, the, the ignorance that these people in the White House and the administration have to have made this deal, it's just absolutely ridiculous. It's going to cost us far more because of this rare earth minerals deal than it would have cost if we had just said, you know what, we'll pay for your reconstruction. You don't have to pay us a dime. We would have been far better off financially if we had said that. In fact, we would be better off financially if we had said, we'll pay for your reconstruction 3 times over, and we don't want a dime. We would be better off. We really would. It's unbelievable. Anyway, let's first take a look at this announcement from the White House from Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, announcing the deal.
Thanks to President Trump's tireless efforts to secure a lasting peace, I am glad to announce the signing of today's historic.
Okay. I can't do it. Sorry. He's good on TV, right? Let let me just read it. It'll be better. Trust me. He tweeted the same thing. It says he's glad to announce that the president the signing of today's historic economic partnership between the United States and Ukraine, establishing the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund to help accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery. Economic security is national security. I think this is okay. Then notice this at DFC.gov, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. We'll work closely with the government of Ukraine to establish this fund. And we look forward to quickly moving on and making everything happen. Okay. So that's what he had to say. Okay. Let me get things cleared up around here a little bit. Yeah. So that's what he had to say. And, you know, basically, let me give you the real deal. The real deal is we will give Ukraine this money and Ukraine will give us dirt. That's the deal the president made. And I'm happy with it because, as I said, I don't think Ukraine should have to pay back a dime. When you're in a life and death situation and a friend helps you out, the friend, a good friend, doesn't ask you to pay them back. All they want is for your continued friendship. But President Don Quixote imagines that it's not just dirt Ukraine's giving us, but it's magical dirt. Dirt filled with imaginary treasure. But this alleged treasure, called rare earth minerals, costs so much to get out of the ground that we'll never make our money back. And the market for it, the global market for it, is just too small. You won't even believe how long it would take to get our money back. We'll all be at least 150 years old before we see a dime. But like I say, that's fine with me because the problem is the man who made the deal thinks he got a great deal. He thinks he's going to see $500 billion coming in soon, like in the next couple of years, probably. Here's the reality of rare earth minerals. And the more I got into this, the more I was really shocked that no media is reporting this full story. It's pretty unbelievable. And I first heard this from a report on ABC Australia. They had a documentary on this. It's a short one, 17 minutes long, but they had a documentary on it. I'll leave a link in the show notes below, and I will also leave several other links to documentation to show you. I'm not just making this up. This is really coming from very reliable sources. So I'll leave those below. I don't want to read all that on this. This will end up being an hour long if I do all that. But first of all, here's what you need to know. Ukraine is not the Saudi Arabia of rare earths. In fact, it's barely the Delaware of rare earths. Geological experts from the USGS, the U.S. Geological Survey, the people who study rocks and dirt and, as it turns out, rare earth minerals for a living, they say Ukraine has no economically viable rare earth infrastructure at all. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have rare earth minerals. It just means they don't have an economically viable infrastructure to get them out of the ground. And the infrastructure will cost so many billions of dollars to build, and it'll take forever to build it, that we'll literally be lucky to see a dime out of it in our lifetimes. But somehow, this is funny, Senator Lindsey Graham got word to Trump that Ukraine was sitting on top of a $10 to $12 trillion treasure in rare earths.
They're sitting on $10 to $12 trillion of critical minerals in Ukraine.
Then he backpedaled to $1 trillion.
They're sitting on $1 trillion worth of minerals that could be good to our economy.
And now Trump has settled on $500 billion, which is kind of like saying your scratch-off lottery ticket is worth somewhere between a pizza and a private jet. Even if Ukraine had these minerals in great quantities, which they don't, they have them in no larger quantities than most other countries, actually. But getting them out of the ground is like trying to squeeze toothpaste out of a rock. To extract, here's an example. Listen to this. And let me see if I have this. No, I was going to show you on the paper, but anyway, listen to this. To extract 2 pounds of neodymium, which is a mineral that makes magnets super strong, It takes 13, it generates, extracting these 2 pounds, generates 13,000 gallons of toxic sludge. Or to put it another way, you get 71 tons of radioactive goo just to make a magnet the size of a grapefruit, all for a mineral that sells. Now get this, if it's sold for $43,000 a pound, then maybe it's worth it. Uh, would you go for $4,300 a pound? They're rare earth minerals, right? Must be super valuable, like diamonds. No. Uh, would you go for 430 a pound? No. It's $43 a pound for 13,000 pounds or 71 tons of toxic sludge. It would cost far more than $43 to clean up the 71 tons of toxic sludge. Just to get rid of, just to take it to the dump would cost more than $43. But we made a beautiful deal, right? We always make the most beautiful deals ever. But it gets worse, or better if you're thinking like the president, I guess. The entire global market for rare earths, this is unbelievable. This is something we know because I got this information from the United States Geological Survey, which is an arm of the U.S. government. It's a department, and that's what they do. They study Earth and all things related to the Earth. This information comes from them from 2024, so we know it's still reliable because you know who hadn't taken office yet and distorted all the information. The total global market for rare earths is just $4 to $5 billion a year. So even if Ukraine magically had $500 billion worth, which they don't, it would take 100 years for the world to buy it all. And that's assuming Ukraine suddenly corners 100% of the rare earth market, which they're not going to do, of course. They'd be lucky to corner 1 or 2% of the market. But let's say they got lucky and cornered 10% of the market. How long would it take to sell $500 billion at $5 billion a year? It'd take 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Realistically speaking, 1,000 years. This president, I'll tell you, he has such a hard time discerning truth from fiction, and he puts people around him who they either already believe the same stuff he did anyway, or they're pretending to, so they can always act like they're in agreement with him. But I've often said, because it works like a clock, it works like a charm. I've always said, if you want to know if a story is true, tell it to the president. If he believes it, it's fake. If he doesn't, congratulations, you just found the truth. Well, in conclusion, once again, as always, our beloved president has led us into a bad deal based on fantasy rather than reality. We would have been far better off financially had we just told Ukraine, we'll pay for your rebuilding. Don't give us anything in return. We'll take care of it. If we just acted like a decent human being, we would have been far better off financially because we wanted to be a greedy pig and get every dime out of it we could. It's actually going to cost us billions more than it would have. But now, not only are we going to pay for the rebuilding, we're also going to pay billions and billions and billions to get the rare earth project started. It will never begin to pay us back what we're going to spend on just getting it going. This is a boondoggle of all boondoggles. So next time you find yourself thinking we have a brilliant businessman in the White House who knows how to make the greatest deals, just remember he's a government worker for a reason. Like you MAGA guys always say, people end up in government there for a reason. Think about it. Hey, thanks for watching. If you found this informative or entertaining, please share, like, or subscribe, or all three. Take care, and I'll see you next time.